Chapter 5. The Tishri holidays and the half holidays. We now approach the study of the most important days for modern Jews. They are those from the 1st to the 10th day of the 7th month, Tishri. Taken together, they are known as Yamim Noroim, solemn days, and Ashereth, Yameh, Teshubah, or is it 10 days of penitence. Their purpose is to prompt the Jew to self-examination and reconciliation with God. The first of these days is called Rosh Hashanah, New Year, which is kind of strange being the 7th month, but the first of these, a name that the biblical writers do not know. In the Bible, it is termed Yom Teruah, a day of blowing the alarm, and Zitron Teruah, memorial of blowing the alarm. The terms Day of Memorial and the Day of Judgment also applied to this day. And see also Numbers 29:1. I'm not seeing the footmark note, so I didn't know when to say that. It is not our purpose here to explain how the first of the 7th month instead of the first day of the 1st month served as the beginning of the new year. Suffice it to say that the 1st of Tishri was, in many respects, the commencement of the year. In this month, the Jubilee year began. Slaves were emancipated, and landed property reverted to its original owner. The most prominent feature in the public devotion of the synagogue consists of the blowing of the ram's horn. Long before the arrival of the festival, its notes are heard. The whole of the preceding month, Elul, is regarded as a month of preparation. Selichoth, special prayers for forgiveness of sin, and the blowing of the Shofar mark the preparation. The month of the preparation takes its character from a well-known tradition. It is reported that on the 1st of Elul, Moses ascended Mount Sinai for the 3rd time and returned on the 10th of Tishri. While the assurance of God's pardon to Israel, while in biblical times the shofar was used for all sorts of announcements, like that of the new moon and festivals. The year of release, the call to battle as a sign of victory, and as an instrument in procession. Its purpose on this holiday is to rouse Jews to the serious contemplation of their sinfulness and their duty to lead a godly life. Sadia, a teacher of the 10th century, holds the shofar, reminds Jews of the creation, their duty to God, the revelation on Mount Sinai, the teachings of the prophets, the destruction of the temple, the binding of Isaac as a sacrifice, imminent danger, the day of judgment, the redemption of Israel, and the resurrection. The shofar is made of a ram's horn flattened by heat. It is always crooked and is finished with a mouthpiece. It is absolutely devoid of all decorations. The shofar is blown for the first time on New Year before the scrolls are returned to the ark, and is preceded by the following benedictions, which I could control the translation and how I say it better if I had my, what is it called? Tahlim Ashkenaz. But the first name is Seder. I don't remember. The Sefer, the Art Scroll Torah Ashkenazi. But praised art thou, God is noun and verb, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to hear the sound of the shofar. Praised art thou, God is a noun and verb, our God, King of the universe, who has kept us alive, sustained us, and caused us to enjoy this season. There are 4 kinds of sounds produced by the shofar. Tekiah, the unbroken sound. Shabarim, the broken sound. Teruah, the wave-like sound. Is that the long tekiah, the prolonged unbroken sound. These 4 sounds are arranged in 3 sets of blasts. The first is tekiah, Shabarim, Teruah, sounded 3 times in succession. The second is Tekiah, Shabarim, Tekiah, also sounded 3 times in succession. The third is Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah, sounded 3 times with this exception that the last Tekiah is the prolonged Tekiah. And we see different sized horns in here, Oh. And in the first book of Samuel, there's mention of an evil spirit being sent to someone. And it said that God does this. So is this why the musical instrument use of horns and whatnot in ceremonies? Wouldn't expect God to send a evil spirit in, but that's what it says. After every set of blasts, a pause follows, during which devotional reflections are recited. The first of these sets of blasts is directed to the angel Sharshia, the second to the angel Tartiel, and after the third set, all angels are implored to help worshippers to become thoroughly imbued with the meaning of the shofar's sounds. The doctrine with regard to these angels was introduced by Kabbalist and is not Jewish. Well, there's different interpretations of Judaism, and Kabbalah represents certain things that were passed on, because Kabbalah, as in direction, actually has roots before what we call Orthodox Judaism. So, but it's not the oldest type of Judaism either. So, in the Musaf service, the service following the return of the scrolls, the Ark, there are again 3 sets of blasts with prayers intervening between the first blast and the second and third sets of blasts. If the first day of the new year occurs on the Sabbath, the shofar is not sounded owing to the labor it entails. The blowing then takes place only on the second day. In some congregations where New Year is celebrated for 1 day only, the ritual provides for the blowing of the shofar even on the Sabbath. The Zizol Jestro ritual has that. The person blowing the shofar must perform this service standing on the bema of the synagogue, the pillar that kind of goes into the ground. The shofar, when blown, is held in the right hand with the opening from which the sound issues, turned upward. In addition to the month of Elul and the New Year, the shofar is sounded at the close of the Day of Atonement. Among the Portuguese Jews, it is then sounded 4 times, and among others, but once. And finally, it is sounded on the 7th day of the Feast of Tabernacles, at each of the 7 circuits made around the synagogue. One word more about the Jewish New Year. On the New Year, as well as on the subsequent Holy Day, the worshippers in the most conservative synagogues wear their burial shrouds as an incentive to sincere repentance, for it helps to remind people of their mortality, the uncertainty of life, and the divine judgment. In addition to fasting, the special confessions of guilt, and the petitions for forgiveness, there is but one peculiar ceremonial institution marking the observance of the Day of Atonement. The institution referred to consists of the kindling of a large wax taper by every member of the synagogue near the bema of the synagogue, or at the seats of worshippers in memory of departed dear ones. The taper is always large enough to burn the entire 24 hours of the fast. The reason for the kindling of the taper lies in the comparison of the Bible makes between the soul of man in the immortality of which the Jew believes, and a lamp or light. We shall now take up for consideration the Feast of Booths, occurring on the 15th day of the 7th month, Tishri. It is being observed for 7 days, the first day alone being a holy convocation, while the remaining 6 days are half holidays. It is instituted in the memory of the dwelling of the children of Israel in both in booths when they journeyed through the wilderness. See Leviticus 23:43. Being a harvest festival, the Feast of Booths is observed in the synagogue by songs of praise, the decoration of the synagogue with plants and fruits, more especially with the use of the palm branch, lulab, and the citron, ethrog. Last I saw, the particular citron that people consider to be obliged is like $25 or something like that. The preparation of the palm branch is based on Leviticus 23:40. And ye shall take unto you on the first day the fruit of the goodly tree, branches of palm trees, and boughs of thick-leaved trees, and willows of the brook, and ye shall rejoice before God as a noun and verb, your God, 7 days. The palm branch is decorated at the lower part with myrtle and willow branches attached to the palm branch by means of leaves of the palm tree. When the palm branch and citron are picked up, the benediction recited is, Praised art thou, God as a noun and verb, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us the use of the palm branch. At is probably the art thou, but Baruch ta Yahweh Eloheinu Malak. I don't remember exactly. But see, we got a palm branch and a receptacle for the citron. And I'm sure you can use any citrus fruit, really, if it's necessary. On the first day is added the benediction in which God is thanked for having spared the worshiper to enjoy this season. But generally only like lemons and limes I've seen done. Enjoy this. Not only the presenter, but many laymen is provided with a lulab and ethrog. The palm branch and the citron are lifted up in full view of the congregation during the rendition of the psalms of praise and the prayer for God's redemption, which are recited while a circuit is made around the synagogue. On Sabbath, the lulab is not taken up, as the carrying of it is regarded as a form of work desecrating the day. The Karaites do not give the lulab a place in the synagogal service, but believe that it is to be used in the building of the sukkah booth. Some synagogues have a booth erected similar to that met in the Jewish home. We shall not speak of the booth in this connection, as its discussion has its proper place among the ceremonial institutions characterizing the Jewish home, to be discussed later. The last day of the Feast of Booths is called Hoshanah Rabbah, because on this day numerous petitions for the salvation of Israel are recited. During the intoning of these petitions, the worshippers make 7 circuits around the auditorium of the synagogue. Among Portuguese Jews, the shofar is sounded on this day as if to give those who have not become thoroughly reconciled with God on the atonement day a last opportunity of repentance before the final judgment of God is sealed. It is on the eve of this festival that a watch takes place, similar to the one held on the eve of the Feast of Weeks. On Shemoneh Atzeret, the Feast of Assembly, celebrated on the 22nd day of the 7th month, Tishri, no special ceremonial institution except the reading of the scroll of Ecclesiastes marks the public service. However, the day following the 23rd day of the 7th month, known as Simchat Torah, Feast of Rejoicing over the Law, is characterized by an elaborate institution, and that rock was not working as a long-term seat. The feast is post-biblical in origin and was not a fixed institution until the annual cycle of Pentateuchal reading from the scrolls was firmly established. As has been mentioned in the first chapter, the last section of Deuteronomy is read on this day from one scroll, and the first section of Genesis from another. The recitations of the customary benedictions over the last subsection, read from the first scroll, and over the first subsection, read from the second, are prized as precious privileges and hence eagerly sought. But the two persons who obtain these privileges, often at the expense of rich offerings to the congregational treasury, are respectively titled Chosen Torah, bridegroom of the law, and Chosen Bereshith, bridegroom of Genesis. And many congregations where this day is still observed, these two bridegrooms are wont to tender their worshippers a repast. On the day of rejoicing over the law, special inducements are held out to the younger members of the congregation to participate actively in the public service. Carrying flags with burning tapers, young boys will, on the eve of the day, join the procession, in which all the scrolls owned by the congregation are carried around the auditorium of the synagogue. As the procession moves through the auditorium, women throw nuts and raisins from the galleries on the men and boys marching below, tokens of the sweetness which the study of the law yields to man. Human. While the scrolls are out of the ark, which should at no time be empty, a burning taper is put into it. In some communities, it is customary to call even young boys who have not yet attained the age of religious majority to the bema to recite the benedictions over one of the subsections of the Pentateuchal festive portion. Beginning with the 25th day of the 9th month, Kislev, Jews celebrate for 8 days Chanukah, Feast of Dedication, in commemoration of the defeat of Antiochus Epiphanes and the rededication of the temple at Jerusalem by Judas Maccabeus. Is it Maccabee of summary of something? It's also called the Feast of the Asmoneans. It is celebrated by kindling on 164 BCE? Celebrated by kindling on every evening the feast. Beginning with the eve of the first day, wax tapers or lamps. Now let me remind you that the historical appearance of Judaism by name appears at this time. This is sort of the event. So that day, you can say Judaism proper existed, but really 540 BCE, something you can recognize as Judaism, distinct from other monotheistic and polytheistic faiths. You really could say about by 540, well, not really too much before, but 540 BCE is a fair date to say that it started. Some people will tell you that there wasn't evidence for another 7 years or 13 years or something, but okay. On the eve of the first day, one light is kindled. The number of lights steadily increases until the 8th day is reached, the number always corresponding to the ordinal number of the day celebrated. A fresh taper daily is used for the kindling of the lights and bears the name of Shamash, or servant. In the Talmud, there is a discussion as to whether the number of lights should increase or decrease from day to day. Hillel believes in the increase and Shammai in the decrease. For the holding of the tapers, every congregation possesses a candelabrum made from either burnished brass or silver. The ceremony of kindling lights is based on a tradition which tells that when the temple was cleansed of all debris by Judas Maccabeus, he found a cruse of oil hermetically closed with the high priest's seal, the size of which indicated that there would be sufficient oil in it to last merely 1 day. Isn't there a version that says 7 days? But 1 day has become the popularly known version. Whereas it miraculously lasted for 8 days. On lighting the Chanukah lights, the following benedictions are recited. Praised art thou, God as a noun and verb, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments, and has commanded us to kindle the lights of Chanukah. Praised art thou, God as a noun and verb, our God, King of the universe, who wrought miracles for our forefathers in days of old. At this season, on the first night, a third benediction, consisting of thanks to God for having spared the worshipper in health and life, is added. After the lighting of the tapers, or lamps, a hymn of praise is sung, dwelling upon the frequent intercession of God's help in the time of Israel's early oppression. And remember that Chanukah is supposed to be the darkest nights of the year, the solar year. Purim, rendered according to biblical etymology, Feast of Lots, and celebrated on the 14th day of the 12th month, Adar, in case of leap year, and on the 14th day of the 13th month, has its public service in the synagogue, marked by the reading of the Book of Esther, which, interestingly enough, has no mention of God, I don't think, anywhere in the book. Same with the Song of Solomon's. Luther wanted the books that didn't mention God out of the Bible, so that's, I don't think Luther had any real spiritual authority, but anyways, both on the eve and morning of the holiday. The Book of Esther is not read on this occasion from an ordinary text of the Old Testament, but from a parchment scroll, which is called Megillah, or the scroll. The Megillah must be carefully written on the skin of a clean animal by a Jewish scribe with good ink, and not printed, although printed copies are in existence and are used by members of the congregation while following the reading of the precentor, who invariably has before him a parchment scroll. And we see a photo of this. This is a facsimile edition, so I think more than other books, I think it's okay. There should be more issue. The Book of Esther is chanted in a melody, unlike that characterizing the reading of the scrolls of the law are the selections from the prophets. The recitation of Esther by heart is forbidden, however well acquainted the presenter may be with the book. Excuse me for the burp. He is compelled to have the text before him. While everybody is in duty bound to read the Book of Esther for himself, persons not understanding Hebrew are considered as having performed their obligation if they listen to its reading. Before the reading of the Book of Esther, these blessings are recited. Praised art thou, God as a noun and verb, our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us by his commandment. And has commanded us to read the Megillah. Praised art thou, God as a noun and verb, our God, King of the universe, who has wrought miracles for our fathers in days of old. Well, we can think of this as spiritual lineage too, whether or not the descent through blood is actual. On the eve of Purim, every worshiper puts his contribution toward charity into a plate or basket at the entrance of the synagogue for collection of gifts. In some communities, the money is thus procured is given to the presenter as a remuneration for his reading of the Megillah. Both Chanukah and Purim are in many synagogues made festivals for young people. They are therefore celebrated by the presentation of plays dealing with the facts of Chanukah and Purim stories. Such are, in the main, the ceremonial institutions which we note during the public devotion in the synagogue on the different occasions of the year. And I think Hanukkah is pretty common too. Maybe 100 years ago it wasn't as common of a bit where plays and all that were part of it. But perhaps we know that the Jewish calendar cycle descends from the Ugaritic one. The Rosh Shemra tablets indicate that as strongly as anything, but there's other information, I'm sure. Well, actually, a lot's been lost to history. But originally, all these holidays kind of had a ceremonial enactment like that. It wasn't just reciting scripture.